called Thomas Sheridan Rides Again. It's just that with the strikes and everything, I want to still do the beefy stuff on YouTube as long as I can get away with it. Because okay, yeah, Odyssey is great as a backup and all the other Rumble and all them things, but they are at the end of the day, a lot of them are echo chambers, and a lot of the people I say about 50% of my audience are alt media, the other 50% are kind of not alt media type people, and this is a good YouTube for all its for all the issues with like fact checking and all that stuff. It still has an excellent go live system, and it's very reliable. The engine, the actual video engine, is incredibly stable. So if you go to the channel Thomas Sheridan Rides Again, and please subscribe to that. Now this morning I'll make another video in a bit, but more topical video. This morning I want to talk about sex magic, and a very, very, very interesting subject. It's really interesting, and a subject that's very multifaceted and dynamic. It's not just necessarily, in fact, a lot of it is not about genitalia. There's one of the problems we've had with the sexual. There's two big problems that have damaged the concept of sex being a spiritual thing. The first is the Abrahamic religions, of course. I'm not saying, I'm going to blame that. But it's true. It made people shameful, this kind of thing. Sex became a sin, the sins of the flesh and all this stuff. And you don't have that in things in pagan religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, and particularly Hinduism. It's incredibly erotic. And look at European paganism. All you have to do is look at the frescoes in Pompeii, and it was exactly so similar to Hindu art, in erotic art. So that was one problem. The second problem was the sexual revolution in the 1960s, with the whole if it feels good, do it kind of thing. And the sexual revolution of the 60s was a way for ugly guys to get laid. That's all that really was. It was it was a free love for them. They didn't have to do anything, so they created this like, it was kind of like an Epstein type generation when you think about it. It's it's kind of like, it's just losers who found a way to like basically mind rape chicks and then rape them, and say, free love, man, and that was all. The sexual revolution was as much a catastrophe as Abrahamic, prohibitions and hang-ups on sex are. Both distracted from the sexual power as a magical and a pure stream of energy that's very useful. And this was kind of augmented in the 60s, not say the 70s, and today into the present by the New Agers with, sacred sex and all this crap, and tantric yoga in the Western style. And then the Eastern style is fine, and this kind of tantric sex and all that nonsense. The Western version of it. Now let's talk about what's fundamentally what sex magic is the application of the psychic energy, and that's an important one. The psychic energy, not the sexual energy. So the sexual energy is the catalyst. The psychic energy to charge the will and cause change in the material world. Now, it's such a it's a subject that I could probably write a book about, but I don't feel like it. But so I'll try and surmise it in this video, So there's kind of different forms of sex magic. There's active sex magic, where somebody uses the actual sexual thing, either a couple or an individual masturbating in order to release a charge towards a sigil or an intention of the will at the moment of orgasm. But the orgasm is it's really, it's not in the genitalia, although that's the actual mechanism, the power things for it. It's actually a psychic explosion. This is why I actually take sex very seriously, even though I joke around and tell dirty jokes and all this kind of thing. I actually take sex very, very seriously, and always have, even as a young person. Because when I was young, I was terrified of getting a girl pregnant. Because I didn't want the child. I didn't want to be a father, and I always made that very clear. Don't try to ever. You better make sure you better make sure we both better make sure we use birth control, and so. But this is like, we ball, man. We ball, this kind of thing. Like, I'm gonna get me some, some bush, man. Like this kind of thing. And Jesus, she's a fucking ride. And I'm gonna ride her, fucking throw her through the leg over. This kind of thing. I never understood that really. That sort of like casual sort of like nature to it. Uh, but anyway, that's the second thing. The other thing is, and many people have told me, it's not memory, but some people have told me that the nearest they've ever had to a spiritual experience is a sexual experience. And there you go, there you go, there you go. See, that's how powerful it is. Now, there's also passive sex magic, which I've done in the past, where there isn't even an orgasm employed, but a kind of eroticism, usually through art, is created. I'll give you an example of it in a little while. And that eroticism is an actual charge in itself. It's very similar to pornography or titillation, or seeing someone who's very sexually attractive. You don't actually have sex with them. You don't, like, you're never going to bang, Salma Hayek or someone like that if you're a regular fella like me. But you still have that energy towards it. And it's a powerful passive energy you can use. And there's also women, if you're a man in your life, or men in your life if you're a woman, who you are drawn to in a sexual way. But it's not going to happen because perhaps the other person is married, or they're in love with another person, or you're just not going to go there. It's that kind of thing. We've all had relationships where, with the member of the opposite sex, where it could be quite loving, in a deep friendship way, very close to romance even. But it doesn't go there. It doesn't go there. Okay, it wouldn't be right. That kind of thing. And that's the you can use the passive energy of that for sex magic. And then there's kind of the black magic stuff of sex magic. Pornography. Now, I'm not saying anything wrong with pornography as such, but that energy, the pornography, say you're whacking off to, like, 70s incest porn, which I find absolutely hilarious. I love that 70s incest, American incest porn, like The Family. Well, I don't watch it now, but like years ago I didn't. You sit around with your friends or your girlfriend or whatever and watch it. But you'd be in stitches watching it, like eventually, like the father would be doing it with the son, and the son, just really the son was like really nervous around girls, and the mother, who's like this hot MILF, comes in. But if you're throwing that energy into the pornography, you're basically wasting that energy. That's like a depletion of your sexual energy. Same, that's because it's like the orgasm is kind of boom, it's gone, and it's the end of it. It's the same reason prostitutes age very quickly. The sex has no meaning, and the energy is completely dissipated. Even if that's another one, and another one, the black magic aspect of it is you shouldn't have sex with a partner and use sex magic without telling them. It should be consensual. And there's nothing to do with love spells. It's a whole other world thing by itself. So I'll give you an example of the active sex magic, the first one, okay? So this could be a man or woman, or two gay people, or two lesbians, or whatever, it doesn't matter. And it helps if there's a strong emotional attachment and love It does help. This is why Crowley made a big deal about the word love. He constantly used love. And in his personal diaries, when he would be having sex, when he'd finish the night, he'd finish his diary, and then he goes, and then to bed and love. And with the woman he was with, even if it was a casual sexual partner he picked up that day, he referred to it as love. Very interesting, and you always remember that, okay? Love is the law, love under will. And when you look at the frescoes in Pompeii of those Roman couples, most of them were married couples. There's a strong sense of, even though they're doing sort of like complex sexual positioning in some of those frescoes, there's something very loving and sweet about them. There's you can see the affection for one another there. So the couple consents, you don't do it without telling them, to have to do a sex magic and create a magical child. And this could be, say, they want to get, I don't know, they want a stable home to live in. Remember, it wouldn't be something like revenge or something. Say they want something. It's the enhancement of the self to become a better person, or to have a better understanding. And if they want that home, it's not because they want to show home to, boast about. It's like they want to provide a home for their family. There's love involved, because love is also a tremendously powerful magical process. It's normally done with, like, you would create a sigil or a seal, and you don't actually go that even complex as a sort of like an Austin Spare type sigil. I cover how this is done in my book Sorcery very simply. And you could paint a picture about it, write a poem about it, or even fantasize it in some way, or in a kind of a way. And at the moment of orgasm, you concentrate all your energy upon the will, what you want, the intention, represented by the talisman or the object of the sigil, whatever you pour your psychic energy into. And I don't know if it's more powerful if the two people reach orgasm together. I'd imagine it would be. But so it's that, you'd say you'd have the thing nearby where you could see it. And at the point of orgasm, you look at it and you pour all your energy into it to create the magical child. It's very simple. It's not difficult or anything like that. Again, sincerity and in alignment with natural law is very important when doing this. Okay, that's also, it also works with masturbation, or can be done with masturbation. So you would have the same thing when you would masturbate. That's actually how I'd say most sex magic is done, about men and women. Even if they are in happy relationships, they don't necessarily like to involve their partner in it. Maybe they don't want them to know they're a little embarrassed. Maybe their partner doesn't share their same interest in sorcery and magic that they do. So they just, that's a very common one. Now that would be the active sex magic. Then there's a passive sex magic, and I found this to be an extremely powerful one. And I think mainly maybe the fact that there's no orgasm or sexual, the restraint, or the actual refraining from the sexual part of it, in terms of physical touching, physical orgasms and stuff like that, is really, I think, is sort of like a soft power, that it's there's absolutely, you're not getting your rocks off, you're not getting it done that way. And so a way to do that would be if you use erotic art. Now you see that Crowley did this all the time. He wasn't a particularly, he was a fantastic poet, and he mostly did it with poetry, but he wasn't very good at painting. But it doesn't matter, even if you're not that good at painting and drawing, you can still do it. You see it all over so much of that. You saw Austin Osman Spare does it. And I believe that's one of the reasons I believe Harry Clarke, the famous Irish artist, was interested in this stuff, because his illustrations, some of them are absolutely in this that have that feel about it. Now, an example of that would be, and a very powerful one to be, would be to select the names of women you know that you find attractive, but you know you will never have a sexual encounter with them, and you actually have feelings for them. You like them and you love them as friends, but you know that will never be a sexual attraction there. And you can, I know it sounds funny, but that's literally done like this. You would draw a picture of, say, a fully erect penis, and even, and it would like be ejaculating paisley shapes, make it as sort of like ornate and pretty as possible. Have the testicles turning into spirals and stuff like that. And so basically, if you're a man, you would draw a phallus. If you're a woman, you would draw a vulva. But you draw so going from this man point of view, you would draw not necessarily your own willy, but you could draw a willy, erect a willy, and you could even bend it slightly and do all kinds of shapes around it. And around the penis, you would write the names of these women that you have an affection for or you find attractive at work. And this is also very secretive stuff, and you don't show it to anyone. If it leaks out accidentally, sometimes people will find their magical journals or so on. It actually might even charge it even more, because you might be this magic is remarkable. If someone found your magical diary and there was a picture of your Willie, and around it was the name of 4 or 5 women in the office you fancied, but you were never going to bang them, or you was, well, not say fancy, but you had amorous feelings towards them. You found them very attractive, but they may be married or not. You're an ugly bastard, and hence why I have to do it so much. But you're an ugly bastard, and that'll never happen. So a friend or some of my discover one of these diaries, and what the fuck is this? And you give me that's personal. That moment of uncomfortable embarrassment is actually charging the actual the actual magical drawing, which is this is the most remarkable thing. Even the embarrassment is helping the pure stream of energy towards intention. Any kind of psychic energy that's remember, involuntary psychic energies are usually the most powerful, like something that causes you horror or terror. But the one that you can actually do voluntary and can produce the same level as a sexual orgasm. And that's actually funny when that happens. You shouldn't be embarrassed by that. And if the woman sees her own name on it, and you're even more embarrassed by it, and she's like, "What the fuck is this?" It actually makes it even stronger. As strange as that sounds, but that's what it is, because the psychic charge is amplified. And so you would do that, you know, and you will find that these women, you won't have a relationship with them. Sometimes you do, though, but you generally don't, and you might find them all of a sudden being real sort of like friendly with you, and it's actually that may be the main power in it, that it breaks down social barriers that are maybe that have inhibitors in them because of like sexual politics, to use a 70s kind of term. But that's not why you do the sex magic. That you put the name of, like, Stacy, who works in the typing pool, or Jessica, who works in the supermarket, or Clarissa, who lives next door, and you can put all three of them or 10 of them on the drawing of the phallus. What they're doing is you're using the attraction you have to them, and it can also be a loving, and even though it's not a sexual thing, it could be a loving thing. It could be a loving and caring thing. It's actually a sweet thing in some ways, and all that focuses a charge on a drawing of a willy, and that drawing of the willy becomes like a magic wand to help the intention come true. And you would have, I mean, this is really kind of funny, but you would have the willy ejaculating upon what your desire is in the drawing. And so it's like that's that's the process. That would be passive sex magic. It's not even really about sex. It's more about art. But because we know of the history of eroticism in art and so on, in poetry and stuff, how powerful that can be. Now, there's also a kind of a performance sex magic. The first thing you would think of would be like strippers and pornography and things like that. But it's a bit more subtle than that. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, a woman said to me, "I bet you really like Led Zeppelin and Robert." And I said, "No, I don't like Led Zeppelin really at all. I like some of the early stuff, early folky stuff, and I like. I mean, I like bits of their songs. I, I like like bits of the Rain song, and I like parts of like Hanging Pole and Gallows Pole, and but I don't like the whole song, and Going to California and Do You Maker, and that's just bits I like that, but like they're not a band that I would actually want to listen to. I don't like their music in completion. I said that, I'm much more comfortable with a band that does a real song like the Who, and so like, and then what she said to me, I'm really surprised because you being a very kind of person interested, it's gone, a sexually kind of focused individual, that Robert Plant screaming like he's orgasming on stage, and I said, oh no, that's a magical thing he does. And we know that Led Zeppelin were very heavily involved in the occult. Well, Jimmy Page was in Thelema anyway, and so that was a sexual energy that was he was putting apart on stage, and the screaming like was mimicking "Oh, baby, oh, baby," that kind of thing. That was all on stage. He wasn't actually having sex. He was singing, but he was having performance sex. He was doing performance sex art that was charging the success of the band. That's what made a relatively mediocre, average, not particularly not particularly dynamic band. I mean, I don't see Led Zeppelin as anyway as dynamic as say Deep Purple or The Who. They're just not to me. But that gave Robert Plant doing that sex magic thing along with the sigil and stuff on our albums, those Zozo thing. That was all to help a band that was basically a run of the mills folky blues band. Into like this kind of like one of the biggest bands that ever was. That kind of thing. It's like, and if you ask anyone about Led Zeppelin, you say they rarely tell you, "Oh, I love this song," but what you love about it, the riff there now and now, or down. In fact, I think that's my favorite Led Zeppelin song is the Immigrant Song, the a complete song, or the drum opening to When the Levee Breaks. But they don't really like the whole song When the Levee Breaks. But you compare it to something like by the Who, like say Won't Get Fooled Again, from the first note of that song through every piece of percussion, bass, guitar, and singing to the very last note of that song, you're utterly enthralled. I don't find that with me personally. I don't find that with Led Zeppelin, and I don't think they're as good as what they're made out to be. But that scream, "Ooh yeah, baby," that kind of thing, that was the sort of like this the stage sex magic that pushed him over the edge. It was the invocation of the sexual experience brought into a live performance. And black soul groups have been doing this forever, like ever since probably since World War II or after World War II, when rock and roll, what does it mean? It was a black term for having sex in America, and you had people like James Brown and Even back in the jazz days, you had jazz musicians like Jelly Roll and stuff like that. That's all sexist. That's all sexual connotations and stuff. And so, sex magic that's basically an introduction to it. Uh, and what you've learned is that like you don't have to have sex really to make it be very effective. And I mean that's like the sex the power of the sexual drive. It's really it's see, this is the interesting thing. Sex creates new life when children are born from it. That's just astounding. Okay, when you think about that, right? But in terms of sex magic, the magical child is not created by per se or exclusively, I should add, is the best way to phrase it, by the orgasm or the incorporation of the genitalia into the actual process. It's actually the sex drive. And also, a very underappreciated aspect of it is the care and loving behind it. Now, that's an underappreciated thing, but even Crowley knew that. And, this is why he had, long-term he had relationships with women for that reason. I mean, it wasn't all whores banged every night or anything like that. There was relationships there. They all had their own, they're all the search for the Babylon, the search for the Babylon in that aspect. But so there you go, sex magic. You didn't, don't read these awful new age articles online or videos. They're all bollocks. Like, ironically, but um, but I always try to take a mature approach to everything. I know I don't know everything, and I know I never will know everything. And I always try to look at things, even though I joke around a bit and have a laugh, but I always try to see the truth of something. And a lot of the times when I'm joking around or having a laugh, that's often a form of chaos magic itself. And but I always look to find the nourishment in everything. The nourishment in the thing in that concept that will nourish your psyche, nourish your soul, nourish your intellect. And always been very important to me. And therefore, like when you have something like people trivialize sex magic. I mean, the sexual energy wasn't trivialized by Willem Reich. In fact, Willem Reich's orgone energy experiments were used, that the FBI murdered him over it, over his clothes busting machines and his other machines. And likewise, the abuse of the sexual energy, the whole thing of like free love and also prohibitions in Abrahamism is the black magic aspect of sexuality. It causes people to have a very negative attitude towards their sex drive, which is probably why the Abrahamic cultures repress it, is because it's the sex drive and the whole thing. Going the Catholic boy going to the confession and going, "Dear Father, I have impure thoughts. I've committed a sin." No, you haven't committed a sin. You have wasted a psychic stream of energy, and it wasn't your fault. You repressed it and you wasted it. Same reason with the free love hippie generation. You have casually discarded it when you needed it for something else. So, there you go, sex magic.